Hello, I'm Emily Wilson, part of the StatRam team and part of NEP. And I've created a simple do file to address not just estimates anymore, but we're interested in the error around those estimates. We have this statistical method of being 95% certain that our estimate is somewhere within a range. So rather than just talking about the point estimate, we want to start talking about the range, the confidence interval, and that comes from a standard error. So I'm going to take you through this do file. The first half looks familiar perhaps if you were in workshop 1, and it is pulling up your DHS data, calculating an indicator, and then labeling that. And in this case we're looking at ANC 4 or more visits, and we're looking at a reference period of 5 years. So let's start on line 39, which is probably less familiar. And that is here we're going to calculate a mean. And I've annotated a couple of these new lines of code. So what we're doing here is getting an unweighted proportion and a standard error and a 95% confidence interval for that unweighted proportion. What this means is every record that we're looking at and every record of interest here is going to be treated the same way. We're not interested in weighting and strata and clustering, which will come later. In this case, we're just interested in getting a proportion, an error, and an interval from that error. Below this, we have some commands that create and store the results for our estimates and errors. And we want to do this because we're still working with the entire data set here. We're going to save this as a temporary data set, and then we're going to be able to use that subsequently to get this table back again. So Stata has a way to store, in its memory, some things that you calculate. So then we're going to clear the data, and we're just going to pull up this matrix of interest, this matrix that contains our regions with their estimates for ANC4, and then the statistics around it, the error and the interval, confidence interval. A label got lost, so we're going to add that back, make sure everything looks good. You can use the browse command to look at the actual data if you're interested. And then we're going to rename some things just because we want to be clear that we're working with the ANC4 indicator. And Stata has these standardized ways of talking about the estimate and the error, and the LL and the UL is lower bound and upper bound of the confidence interval, but we want to be clear that we're looking at ANC here. So we're just going to rename some things based on our indicator, and then we're going to save this work. And then we're going to do, this will become more important later when we want to take into account that this is survey data. It's not simply everything in the population. We're actually wanting to take into account the clustering, the strata, and the weighting. But for now, we're just generating these so we can get a nice figure at the end. And to do that, we have to label our regions, and then we're gonna make a plot. And why don't you try running this code, seeing what comes out of your data, and you'll have to change the directory in line 7 as well as wherever you want to store your graphs in lines 105 and 106. And email me with any questions or problems. Just to recap, the mean that we're using here to just get acquainted with errors and confidence intervals is going to treat every household as the same. Later, we'll survey set the data and we will treat households according to their sampling frame. But for now, we're just interested in an introductory graph. And you'll get something that, well, you probably get exactly this if you run the code. You can, once you're comfortable with this graph, you can try changing the indicator and seeing whether these regions, which are on the x-axis, have a certain order that remains consistent across other indicators, or if ANC4 is maybe high in the eastern region, but another indicator, the eastern region may have a lower estimate than some of the comparable areas in Tanzania. So you can ask all sorts of questions with this simple way of looking at estimates and their errors and their confidence intervals. Look forward to working with you. Thank you.